Yo, what's going on? So let's be honest. A lot of people are, I think, even now being semi-public about it. That since the war started on October 7th, this forever war, with the invasion of Israel by Hamas, a lot of people have been using their phones on Shabbat. It's the truth. People are looking to stay connected to updates, incoming missiles, time to get out of the shelter. People want to know what's going on, that their loved ones are safe, this kind of stuff. Um, and what you see, I think, with this is that there's kind of like a shift going on in how people are relating to their phones, into using electricity on Shabbat. It's like a grassroots up, ground up shift, not like a top down directed shift. And just based on what I'm seeing in conversations I've been having with people, um, I'd say that a lot of people are starting to change their relationship with electricity and electric devices on Shabbat, and are kind of in uncharted waters for them, about what to do, what it means. What do you do on the phone if you've already got it open? Do you check the news? Do you open Facebook? What do you do? What's going on? This kind of stuff. Um, and I think that shift, just to reflect on it for a moment, is actually kind of important, because as someone who's been interested in the history of the prohibition, the so-called prohibition of using electricity on Shabbat, for some time, for a few decades now, actually, and who's done some research on it. It's interesting to me, how this emerged, how much of it has to do with modern circumstances that came about, in the past, couple centuries, with the Industrial Revolution and the Electrical Revolution after that. And, it's interesting to me how what's really apparent is that a change in policy, a change in popular perception of the use of electricity on Shabbat, is really not going to come from the top down. It's not going to come from rabbis, sitting on boards, or at conferences, or even, unfortunately, rabbis writing teshuvot, because as we see from the teshuvot, rabbis will make like excellent airtight cases for why electricity is permitted, and then somehow, in some way, shape, or form, they take that, they turn on its head and say, but they already said it's prohibited, so it's prohibited, that kind of thing. So it's not going to come from the top. It's going to come from the bottom up. It's going to come from basically from people changing their perception of electricity, and changing their perception of what's considered within the spirit of Shabbat. And it's just going to be, eventually we'll see that, rabbinic policy will reflect the popular approach. But this is the kind of thing that's not going to come from the top down. It's got to come from the bottom up. So that's just some thoughts on where we're kind of holding, and how that shift is kind of emerging as we see, at least here in Israel. But also, I wanted to take a moment, as someone who uses electricity on Shabbat, and is also, I consider myself, observant of melakha. I wanted to just offer some suggestions, some guidance. I'm not a rabbi, but I've done some studying in my life, and I want to offer some guidance on how to use electricity halachically in a permissible way, because as I've you press me on this subject at a Shabbat table, I'll go on about it. But as I've said before, electricity is not fire. It's actually it's physically more like water. But the basic idea of electricity is that the use of electricity doesn't fit the category of any melakha, any of the prohibited categories of labor on Shabbat. And there's also no gzeira no rabbinic decree against using electricity or electrical appliances. So that is really the starting point of the conversation. And that's really the first thing to internalize, that regardless of whatever the popular perceptions are of the use of electricity or the popular myths about it, these kinds of things, there's really electricity is not fire. Using electricity is not, a melakha, and there's no gzeira against it. Okay. So then, given that it's essentially as a power source mutar, it's permitted. So then what are you supposed to do? Is everything mutar? Can you do anything with electricity? Is, everything, hefker, like this kind of thing? And so basically, I want to make a few things clear. First of all, just because electricity itself is mutar, is permitted, it doesn't mean that anything and everything you do with electricity is permitted, right? There's still some boundaries, there's still some levels, and some of that depends on stuff that's explicit, and some of that depends on stuff that has to do with, there's honest ambiguity and confusion based on the modern situation with modern appliances, and so therefore it's not exactly clear how to definitively apply the law in those situations. So you want to err on the side of caution, if it's clear to you, then you want to at least be aware that that's based on your own reasoning, and it's not necessarily based on anything that's explicit. So first of all, let's take a step back. What's permitted? Okay, so obviously checking your phone. If you've got a missile coming in or whatever it is, or you got to check the updates for, what's going on with the family, like this kind of stuff, like that's fine, right? There's no fire going on. The issue with light, it's an LCD screen. There's really no issue with any kind of burning or anything like that. There's no melakha involved in checking your phone. By the same token, right, on the same point, not everything you do with your phone is permitted. Why? Because in addition to the biblical categories of prohibited labor, there's also a whole other class of laws that are rabbinic prohibitions that have to do with making your Shabbat day different than your weekday. So it's called the Surei Shabbat, and it's basically like you have to make sure that you're not doing things on Shabbat that are same to what you're doing during the week. And by the way, that's nothing to do with electricity. Like if you read the newspaper every day, like that's your weekday activity with your morning coffee, you read the newspaper, then you can't do that on Shabbat, actually. Forget electricity. That's basically you're making your Shabbat like your weekday. You got to do something to make your Shabbat different from your weekday. Just something to keep in mind. So if you're basically someone who uses your phone to go on Facebook all the time and to have all kinds of, comments and posts and all this kind of stuff, then just because you can use your phone on Shabbat doesn't mean that you can necessarily do that on Shabbat. Right? Doesn't mean you can actually go into Facebook and start, commenting and posting and all that kind of stuff. Right? There's still got to be some way that your Shabbat is different than the weekday. Now, that's kind of subjective, and it kind of differs from, person to person, community, whatever it is. So I can't speak to you specifically as to what you can and cannot do with your phone on Shabbat, but for yourself what would make Shabbat different from a weekday. You know what you do on a weekday, and what would make Shabbat different. So you can use your phone, check, for updates, that kind of stuff, but you can't go ahead and just do anything on your phone. Now, there's other stuff. There's things like lights, right? Now, people got really concerned about the idea of heating the tungsten filament in incandescent bulbs, even though most bulbs we have today are LEDs, and those are totally fine, and they're completely different technology. But people, even when you have like the bulbs that are with the tungsten filament, people thought, maybe you're heating the metal, and so that's one of the forbidden labors. You can't heat the metal, okay? That's not how it works. There's a forbidden labor of heating metal in order to refine it, to smelt it, to work with it in metallurgy. It's not just any blanket thing of heating metal that happens to be heated or whatever it is. And it's not just, the use of fire is also significant in it. So really the incandescent light bulb, the tungsten filament, it's not the classic case of heating a metal for the purposes of metalworking. It's just not how that works. So that's basically, something to keep up the lights. And now we have LEDs, and most lights are LEDs, light emitting diodes. There's no metal filament. It's just not how it works. It's just not. Really, the lights are fine. Electricity, again, is not fire. Completing a circuit. Okay, so you want to talk about circuits for a second. So one of the common objections people raise is that a circuit, when you complete a circuit or you break a circuit, they're saying, well, you're basically building something or completing something or doing the final blow to finish something. I don't want to get into all the different, breakdowns of why electricity is mutar and it's not melakha. There's the baby screaming for you. But there's, hey. Yeah. But basically the circuit, it's just the way it's meant to be used. It's called derech shimush. It's the way a circuit is meant to be used is you open it, you close it, you complete it, you break it. You want a circuit that's something that's not in a fixed state all the time. And you want to be able to use it dynamically. And you want to allow basically those electrons to flow through the wires into the device, and it's whatever you're using, the light or the whatever it is. Okay, so that's lights. We did phones, we did lights. Okay, phones, you can definitely use it to check for updates or family. Can't really do it for everything. Can you call on the phone? So this is actually an interesting thing. This is an example of where there's a matter of debate. If there's a matter of things, there's a general idea that the phone device is that you it's not melakha, right? It's not a forbidden labor, right? Oh, why the baby sad? That's not forbidden labor, right? But then you can do some things with it. But there's also a concern that some people have about making a sound, right? Making a sound with the device, with something that's forbidden, having a lasting effect, even though, it's a non-tangible, even quantifiable kind of effect. It's a legitimate concern in terms of it's based in actual halachic sources. I personally think that it doesn't apply at all to how the electronic devices work and to how modern mechanical devices work. But that's something to be aware of, that there are people, that's a rabbinic concern. It's not a biblical concern, it's a rabbinic concern. And so therefore, when it's a case of doubt, right, where we can't really bring the situation out of the question, out of a situation of doubt, so then it's, we err on the side of leniency. And so basically, there's, even if you want to accept that if there's doubt in your mind as to whether the voice, the sound that's produced by the speaker is like this intangible effect that's produced by melakha or whatever it is, and so therefore it's problematic, you can pretty reasonably err on the side of leniency in that one, especially if it's a matter of importance. And so again, the idea is that these are just not even guidelines, suggestions on how to approach smartly and intelligently with nuance the use of electronic devices on Shabbat. So there, that's using the phone, that's using the lights. I could go into a bunch of other stuff in terms of whether using a microwave, what's that? Because that cooking, is cooking loud? Is all forms of cooking a problem? Hint, no. Some forms of cooking are okay, but as long as you don't use fire or todot chama. But basically, that's just some basic stuff that I think comes up with a lot of people. Phone, lights, air conditioner, heater, those kinds of things. It might even be the case, if you think about it, that like once we've established that the use of electricity is actually mutar, it's actually permitted, de facto. Then it's a question of, are there some situations where, due to other factors, might the use of electricity be encouraged or even required? For example, if it's a boiling hot day, and I'll give you even a better example that's more timely for what we're doing now. You get down to the miklat, right? You get down to the bomb shelter. No one left on the light. What do? Got to have light in the shelter. People can't just be bumbling around trying to get in and all like a madhouse when there's missiles falling. Okay, you want to say it's a time of emergency, it's a life-saving thing, it's a different situation. Yes, but what I'm saying is that you actually have an obligation, not just because of pikuach nefesh, you have an obligation to turn the light. Give you something that's not pikuach nefesh. It's a hot day, it's a boiling day in the middle of summer. You have guests coming over for the Shabbat meal. You come over, someone forgot to turn on the air conditioner. But you're gonna have everyone just sweat and just boil and just suffer through that meal. No, you turn on the air conditioner, right? And it's not like breaking the rules, because again, electricity is not fire. It's not fire. And at the same time, the use of electricity does not fit cleanly into any established category of prohibited labor. So that's what things can you do and can you not do with machines that do prohibited labors. That's a whole other thing, and it's a much more grayer area, and there's more ambiguity, because again, how we correctly understand and respond to the Industrial Revolution, the Electrical Revolution, has a lot to do with how we understand where these devices fit into the halachic framework. But I just wanted to put that out there that, just to sum up, welcome to the party. The shift is happening. People are starting to use their phones on Shabbat. People are starting to use electricity on Shabbat. And at the same time, I think that people should be aware that, even though electricity is technically permitted, you don't have to feel bad about using your phone on Shabbat or turning on the light on Shabbat. Even though it's technically permitted, there are still things to be concerned about, and not just gray areas, but sometimes danger zones that you want to stay away from, and those are important to be mindful of. Well, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I hope you continue having a Moadim L'Simcha.